We may look at suffering in our lives and ask the question, why does it have to be that way? There's a story of a man who found a cocoon of the emperor moth. And this man took this cocoon home. He wanted to watch as the moth began to emerge from its cocoon. And so he took it home and he placed it in the center of his table at the center of attention so that he could watch it very closely. But it seemed that as the time came for that moth to emerge from that cocoon, it began to struggle deeply. The hole seemed a little bit too narrow, too constricted for the moth to get out. So the man, in compassion for that moth, took a scissors and he snipped the corner off. The moth seemed to emerge so easily, so quickly after he had done this. And he expected that after a few hours, the moth would begin to spread its wings and its natural beauty and begin to fly around. But instead, that moth's body was simply rather large in size, its wings kind of withered, and it began to drag those wings around as they were all shriveled up. The constricting cocoon and the struggle. It was necessary. The suffering was necessary for that cocoon because in that tiny opening, God had planned that fluid from the moth's body would rush to its wings to help it develop. But that merciful snip of the scissors, in reality, it was cruelty. Sometimes the struggling's exactly what we need in life in order to develop. Why did God arrange things so that we would receive salvation through his cross? Why through his suffering? Maybe perhaps it's today's psalm that we sung that gives us the answer. Lord, let your mercy be on us as we place our trust in you. Trust. Trusting in God that he knows why he designed the world to be the way it is. Trusting in God. And the reason why sometimes there is suffering. Original sin, which broke down mankind's relationship with God, it was a failure in trust. Don't eat of this particular fruit. But Adam and Eve didn't trust God. Instead, they bought into the lie. Just eat this fruit and you'll be like God. Life will be so easy. They didn't trust. To rebuild that relationship, which is the only place the human heart can find happiness, God had to win back our trust. And he did it by suffering and dying on the cross, proving once and for all that nothing we can do, no matter how terrible, no matter how evil it may be, will win away his love for us. Christ suffered. He suffered and died on that cross to win back our trust. But it's not enough to understand this with our minds. We have to trust God with our hearts. We have to learn to trust God with our lives. A privileged way to do that is through how we deal with our own suffering in life. When God permits us to suffer, especially if that suffering isn't the result of our own faults, he's giving us a golden opportunity to exercise our trust in him. A little bit of suffering to place our trust in him. If a young man is called to the priesthood, for example, they may find it painful in their lives to have to give up family, to maybe have to give up a girlfriend. All for God? But in the wonder of that sacrament and the wonder of that priesthood, God helps you to grow in a special grace, to follow what He's calling you to in life. Or take another example of a married couple, and one of the spouses falls seriously ill. The other one has to support and run the household in addition to caring for that sick person. In tough times like those, we have the chance to say to God, Lord, I don't understand, but if you give me your grace, I will carry this cross for you, just as you carried your cross for me. You see, sometimes in our suffering, we think it's merciful to maybe take the scissors and cut the opening open a little bit wider so that things are a little bit easier for us. But in God's great design, there's always a purpose. There's always a reason. In His suffering, Christ showed beyond all doubt that He is faithful to us in our suffering. He gives us that chance to learn to be faithful in Him in our suffering. In that relationship of mutual faithfulness lies the secret of life's true meaning. Once again, putting our trust back in God. As we continue with this Mass, let's really bring our suffering to Christ and let His grace nourish our trust in our Lord. What is the purpose for our suffering? To put our trust back in God. As He suffered and died for us, He showed us that nothing is too great for Him. Are we willing to trust in Him through maybe a little bit of suffering that we may have to go through?